When you look back at the original PlayStation library, there is a very specific, undeniable truth staring right back at you from the shelves. For every single genre-defying masterpiece, for every revolutionary survival horror or sprawling fantasy epic, there are about 15 plastic jewel cases with an EA Sports logo stamped on the front. Electronic Arts practically built an empire on the console by treating it like an annual subscription service. And at the absolute top of that empire, sitting on a throne made of gridiron and aggressive marketing, was John Madden. Madden wasn't just a video game series in the late 90s, it was culturally mandatory if you owned a PlayStation. You almost certainly owned a copy of Madden, even if it was just to play against your friends when they came over on a weekend. But looking at the entire run of the franchise on this single console is a fascinating, slightly terrifying exercise. We are talking about 9 separate releases. This is almost a decade of continuous, yearly iterations squeezed onto the exact same grey box. Taking them on one by one would be an absolute nightmare of repetition. Trying to squeeze a unique 30-minute deep dive out of a minor roster update from 1999 is a fast track to burnout. So instead, we are doing a complete historical sweep. We are going to look at the macro evolution of the franchise. We will pinpoint the exact moments the tech evolved, the years the engine finally clicked into place, and the bizarre twilight era where EA simply refused to stop printing PS1 discs.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
Well, we finally made it to San Diego. Now let's head into the stadium for Super Bowl 32. Hi, I'm John Madden. Welcome to Madden NFL 98.
Welcome to the PSX Index. I'm Parasan, and this is the show where I play and document all 1,278 PS1 games released across Northern America, and this episode is index entry 78 through to 86. We are clearing out a massive clunk of the backlog today by tackling the entire Madden NFL timeline in one continuous sprint. The journey starts with Madden 97, a game that feels incredibly out of place when you boot it up today. This was released when the PlayStation was still trying to figure out its identity, and EA was clearly still holding on to the past. Instead of the fully polygonal athletes we associate with the 32-bit era, Madden 97 is essentially a 16-bit game wearing a modern coat. The players on the field are still flat 2D sprites. It creates a really bizarre visual clash. The menus look sleek, the CD quality audio and the stadium crowd noise are a massive step up from the old cartridge days. But the minute the ball is actually snapped, you are basically playing a polished up Sega Genesis game. The gameplay is fast and undeniably chaotic, but it lacks the weight and precision that the series would eventually be known for. It is the pure definition of a transitional title, a studio tentatively testing the waters of a new hardware generation without fully committing to jumping into the deep end.
First down.
Timeout.
While EA was busy printing money and treating the PlayStation like a personal ATM, they were actually losing the tech war. We tend to remember Madden as the undisputed permanent king of the genre, but in the mid-90s, the crown was slipping. If you were a kid in 1996 looking at the most next-gen experience possible, you weren't looking at Madden 97, you were looking at Sony's own NFL Game Day. It's easy to forget now, but Sony's internal teams were using their home field advantage to show off what the PlayStation could actually do. While Madden 97 was still fumbling with those flat 2D sprites, basically a Sega Genesis game wearing a tuxedo, Game Day had already moved into full 3D polygons. It made Madden look ancient overnight. There is a rare, frantic energy to EA's development during this specific window. They weren't just the big evil empire yet. They were the old guard staring down the barrel of irrelevance because they hadn't figured out how to make a 3D athlete look good. This pressure is exactly why the jump we're about to see in the next few entries felt so aggressive. EA didn't just transition to 3D because they felt like it. They did it because they were being embarrassed on their own turf.
There's a flag down.
The real shift, the exact moment the franchise actually arrived on the console, happened over 2 years with Madden 98 and 99. This is where the 16-bit training wheels completely came off. Madden 98 introduced what EA marketed as liquid AI and finally gave us fully polygonal 3D players. They looked incredibly blocky, sure, but the impact of the mechanical change cannot be overstated. Suddenly, tackles had actual physical weight. You could see the geometry of the players colliding, rather than just watching two flat images awkwardly overlap on the screen. But it was Madden 99 that fundamentally changed the landscape of sports gaming forever. This was the year EA introduced franchise mode. Before this, sports games were largely disposable single-season experiences. Franchise mode turned Madden into a sports RPG. You were drafting players, managing the salary cap, dealing with retirements and trying to build a dynasty over multi-consecutive seasons. It gave the game an undeniable level of depth and permanence. You weren't just playing a quick expedition match to kill an hour anymore. You were investing dozens of hours into a single memory card save file. That one single mode essentially guaranteed that millions of players would buy the new version every single year.
Get ready for Madden NFL 99.
This era also marked a massive shift in how the game was sold to us. Up until this point, the face of the game was, well, John Madden. But in Madden 99, released in 1998, everything changed. For the first time, John wasn't the solo star of the box art. They put 49ers running back Garrison Hurst on the front, signalling the pivot from coach's simulation to superstar marketing. And in true Index fashion, we have to mention the superstition. Hurst famously broke his ankle shortly after that release, inadvertently birthing the Madden curse. It's a bit of a dark trivia that has followed the series for decades, but it perfectly encapsulates the human drama that started to bleed into these plastic discs. EA wasn't just selling a game anymore, they were selling the NFL's soul, and the stakes were getting high enough that people started looking for patterns in the bad luck. The arms race was officially on. Sony had the tech, but EA had the brand, the budget, and the sudden, desperate need to prove they could master the third dimension before they were left behind in the 16-bit dust.
Number 31 is the return man. Santiago with the takedown. First and 10. The Broncos line up with 3 wide receivers. Throws left. Nash with the reception. Let's check the replay on that one.
By the time we hit the turn of the millennium, spanning Madden 2000, 2001 and 2002, the game engine was completely locked in. EA knew exactly what the PlayStation hardware could handle, and they focused entirely on refinement, playbook depth and broadcast atmosphere. This is the era where the presentation really started mimicking a live television broadcast. The UI was slick, the AI was punishing if you made a bad read, and the pacing of the matches felt much more strategic and grounded. But the most memorable part of these specific years is the commentary. John Madden and Pat Summerall were finally given enough audio space on the disc to sound like real people instead of a disjointed soundboard. Yes, the phrases repeated if you played each games, but hearing Summerall's deadpan play-by-play delivery, followed by Madden completely losing his train of thought to talk about a lineman eating a turkey leg, added so much personality to the experience. This 3-year stretch is the absolute peak of the PS1 gridiron. The games ran smoothly, the mechanical bugs of the early 3D transition were ironed out, and the series felt incredibly confident.
Williams skies this punt. Lewis almost broke it there.
1 or 2 more blocks would have sprung him.
Lewis, the deep man. Fakes the handoff.
Then we reached the twilight releases, Madden 2003, 2004 and 2005. This is where the history of the franchise on the console gets genuinely strange. The PlayStation 2 had already launched, established dominance and completely taken over the market, yet Electronic Arts kept printing these PS1 discs. Playing these final 3 entries is a surreal experience because they are fundamentally identical to each other. They are essentially zombie releases, kept alive purely to capture the remaining market of players who hadn't upgraded their console yet. Madden 2005 on the PS1 is a bizarre late-era artifact. It exists simply because it could. It is a quiet, unceremonious end to a franchise that once pushed the system to its absolute limits, fading out not with a bang, but with a recycled playbook. It's a brutal grind to play them back to back, but we are officially 86 games down with 1,192 games to go. If you want to help this channel chip away at a massive number, hit subscribe. Next time on The Index, we are finally leaving the stadiums behind and diving straight back into the weird aisle for the second bizarre bundle. Expect a space station that forgets how to speak English, a heavy machinery arcade simulator, and a platformer staring at a human-sized egg. Click a playlist on your screen to keep the retro trip going, and I'll see you there.
There's a flag on the play.
Holding. Offense.